So one of the major criticisms of the 737-700 by PMDG when it came out was that it looked a bit too clean. It didn't look like a well-used 737 that might have been flying for 15 years. Well, there is now a way to make your aircraft feel a bit older, a bit more realistic. Yes, that's right. In today's video, we're talking about Mike's 737 cockpit mod. Let's get right into it. Hello everyone, welcome back to another video. If you're new around here, be sure to hit the subscribe button, and if you're not, you know what to do. Be sure to like and comment down below to stay up to date with the most important Microsoft Flight Sim news, updates, add-ons and everything in between, as well as a bit of real world aviation as well. In today's video I'm talking about a bit of a freeware add-on called Mike's 737 cockpit mod, which is a partial repaint of the PMDG 737-700 cockpit. And in my opinion, it makes a great difference that I'm sure most of you will love. So let's get right into it. Okay, so welcome to here on the ground. We're actually on the runway right now at Stewart International Airport in a beautiful Southwest 737-700. Now we're not going to go anywhere at this point, we're just going to head back into the cockpit. I've installed the mod right now and I'll be showing you how to install it later. So should we go look at some of the major details? Okay, so first off, it might not seem like much because we haven't got the default version to compare it to. So wait to the end of the video to see a comparison of the default cockpit versus the updated, unclean, and more realistic cockpit. You might be able to notice the obvious things, such as the general wear and tear under the rudder pedals. You know, it's very scratched down there. We've got, I don't really know what it is really, because I imagine this is metal, but maybe what is left of some sort of carpet, some sort of fabric surface. Looking at the bottom of the yoke, on the control column here, you can see this is much dirtier. You might be able to notice that on, if I get it into the light, that on the kind of checklist on the yoke, we've now got some scratches and some dust on there, which is more realistic. Now moving over to the primary flight display in that area, if you look down the side of the displays, you can see, you know, we got some general wear and tear there, and this can be seen over most of the panels, including the overhead panel, the autopilot panel, or the mode control panel, as it's officially called, and indeed down here on the radio panels. I mean, just look at these switches. You know, this is general wear and tear right here like no tomorrow. Absolutely incredible. Now, of course, not every single surface has received an update. Mike gives an explanation for this on his website, saying that basically some things just aren't good enough for Mike to edit. They just look weird. Blender doesn't accept it, whatever, you know how it is. You've got to remember, a lot of the stuff in this cockpit came right from P3D, so I guess it is quite awkward to mod on. I mean, even here you can see what would be, I'm sure, some polished metal. You know, it's dirty, it looks a bit rustic, a bit unclean, it just looks a bit more realistic. That's the general theme here. Same can be said with the glare shield. Notice up here, you know, we've got some scratches, general wear and tear. It is really just a more realistic cockpit. Moving into the overhead panel, you know, we've got smudges, we've got paint wearing off. I don't know if you can really see without comparing it, like we will do later, but these switches, they're almost pure white in the default version. Not in here, they're certainly, you know, they've sort of got greasy, I imagine, got finger marks on, that kind of thing. You know, really improving the realism. Now, before I give you a comparison, let me show you how to set it up. Okay, so download it from the flightsim.to website. All you need to do is really easy. Scroll down here and click the download now button. You might have to wait 10 seconds or whatever, but as soon as it's done, drop it in your community folder, I should say, community folder, obviously when Microsoft Flight Sim is off, and then it should be installed. Now there is some sort of instructions you need to follow to make sure that you get everything bang on. This photo shows you how to do it, but in case you're stuck, although it's already set up normally in my 737, I'm going to show you how to do it. So what you're seeing on the screen now is some FMC setting configuration. Basically, as Mike says on the website, some objects in the cockpit have not been updated and then will remain default. So in order to get the best potential out of this add-on, Mike has edited some of the features in the cockpit. To give the example of the mode control panel, he's only done the Collins version, he hasn't done the Honeywell version, so for that you're going to make sure you're on Collins. Let's head back into the flight sim and I'll show you what I mean. So all you want to do is head down to the FMC, click PMDG setup, click aircraft, and then click equipment, and then you're met with 15 pages of customization. If you haven't been here before, don't worry, I'm going to show you how to do it. So the first one is to make sure at the top that your mode control panel is set to Collins. Let me show you what that does. So right now we've got the Collins one on. As you can see, it's been updated by Mike's 737 cockpit mod, but if we come back to Honeywell, you can see this hasn't been updated and it doesn't look as old, it doesn't look as rustic. So make sure you swap it to Collins. And there you go, you can see we've got the smudges and the chips and the scratches on it now. The dirt around the switches, it just looks much better, doesn't it just? Then you're going to want to come to page 11, so skip all the way through to page 11 where it says instruments, and then you're basically going to want to make sure that your standby instruments are set to default, so they should look like this, because these ones haven't been updated, your analog ones, so sadly you won't be able to use the analog ones if you want to see everything in its proper condition. So make sure this is set to basically standard. You want to make sure your HGS is installed, which I think comes along onto default when you set this up anyway. Then finally the last thing to do is make sure your yaw damper gauge is on. That's the most of the instruments all in place. Last thing you want to do is come over to page 13. And depending on whether you want original lights or LED lights, I don't think this really matters, but the guy on the website has put original, so maybe it's best to set original. Put your cutoff switch style to old. I think it's set as old as default. But as you can see just down here below the throttle, the engine cutoff switch, you know, the old one has the wear and tear, the new one does not, so make sure it's set to old, although the new one does look much better in my opinion. And that's basically how you set it up. You should be left with a cockpit that's covered in scratches, that's covered in something looking not too pleasant, you know, but at the end of the day it's a sign of a loved aircraft, and I think it looks much better. Let's go over to a look at a comparison now between the default cockpit and the this updated cockpit. So the thing is here, when we start off, we've got a fully default cockpit. I'm then going to swap all the way over to Mike's 737 cockpit, and you can see a big difference, but of course being in the jump seat, we can't necessarily zoom into all the detail. Now we're going to go split screen. So on the left side we've got the 737 cockpit mod, and on the right side we've got the default mod. I think the thing that stands out here is the control column, and indeed under the rudder pedals. These are the most obvious things, but of course I think the 737 cockpit mod looks a bit darker. Ignore that the gear level was always up, even though when the gear was coming up or coming down, that's just replay tool, but I think you get a big picture of what this mod does to the 737. It looks so much more realistic. It's something I can really get behind. It's a great little add-on, effective, easy, does the job, it's awesome. I really do recommend it. It makes a massive difference. It feels so much more realistic, and although from afar it doesn't look too different, once you start zooming into, you know, your knobs, your switches, your overhead panel, it does make a massive difference. I hope you enjoyed this add-on. From me today, that is all. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you've enjoyed. If you have, be sure to leave your thoughts down below and tell me if you're picking up this add-on, and if you haven't, be sure to leave your feedback down below. You know, I'm always learning, so if there's something you didn't like or something you think I could do better, let me know. From me today, I'll see you around. Check out my Amazon affiliate links for all the stuff I use to fly, film and edit. It doesn't cost you anything extra, but it's a great way to financially support the channel. I do get a little bit of commission at no extra cost to you. I'll see you around, guys. Have a good one. Bye bye.